Malfunctions can be one of the most intimidating things for new gun owners to deal with. In fact, some will purposely try to select a revolver rather than a semi-automatic just to not have the hassles of trying to deal with a malfunction. But as you'll see here, as we go through how to clear malfunctions, what causes them, and how you fix them, you'll see that it's really not that difficult. It's all a matter of getting good education. So we're going to talk about the different types of malfunctions that there are out there. Basically, malfunctions can be grouped into three different categories. They can be grouped into a primary malfunction, a secondary malfunction, and a tertiary malfunction. And primary malfunctions have two different types of malfunctions included in them. There's the failure to fire and the failure to eject. So we're going to talk about each one of those. So first we'll talk about the failure to fire. This is when you pick up your firearm, point it, press the trigger, and you get a click. It's the loudest sound in the world when you're expecting a shot to go off. So if you get a click and nothing happens, this is a failure to fire. This is a primary malfunction. This is caused by many different things. It can be caused by either a broken firing pin, defective ammunition, or an empty chamber. Sometimes you just forgot to get a round chambered in before you press the trigger. It can also be caused by failing to get the magazine seated properly. So there's a number of reasons that this could happen. But the most important thing to know is that this is a primary malfunction. The other type of primary malfunction is the failure to eject. This means you fired a round, you got a live one downrange, but the empty casing, the spent brass, failed to eject properly. So again, this can be a few different things. This can be that you had somehow the ejection port was obstructed, so the round couldn't fly out. It could be, another big one is that you were limp wristing, we call it, or poor recoil control. So you were actually allowing the gun to do a lot of movement this way, and that was actually taking out the intended movement of the slide. So what happens when you're doing the poor recoil control, again, this gun is designed so that when it fires, it makes this motion, and all of that energy pushes the slide back, and the spring takes it back forward to spit the spent casing out and put a fresh one in. But if you're kind of doing this while you shoot, allowing the gun to move in your hands, you're taking some of that inertia away, and that can cause it to not properly eject the round for you. So those are both primary malfunctions. So how do we clear a primary malfunction? Well, a primary malfunction is cleared with a three-step primary malfunction clearance drill. And the three steps are tap. You're going to tap the magazine into place, rack and roll. You're going to rack the slide while you kind of roll the firearm to its side, and then you're going to assess, meaning you get back up on the target, assess whether or not you need another shot to go off. If you do, then you would press the trigger and see if indeed a live round came out. If you don't need another shot to go off at this point, for whatever reason, either you've deemed that in a self-defense situation the threat is no longer a threat, or if you're at the range and you just decide you want to hang a new target, that's fine. But what you want to do again is these three steps. You're going to tap, rack and roll, and assess. Okay, so we're going to talk about how we use this primary malfunction clearance to clear each one of these primary malfunctions that we talked about, or some of the more common ones rather. So the first one would be, we talked about if you have an empty chamber or you forgot to chamber a round into place when you went to the range, right? So you see we've got nothing into this firearm here, so I go ahead and I'm going to close the slide. We're using dummy rounds here. You can see these orange dummy rounds. They have orange plastic filled inside of the casings so that they're incapable of firing a live round out at all. There's no primer inside. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take these dummy rounds in our magazine. We've got the empty chamber. We're simulating that we're at the range. We've got our slide closed, and we take our magazine, we load it into place, but we forgot to chamber a round. So we point out our target, and click. We get that loud click. So we're going to use the 3 steps of the primary malfunction clearance to go ahead and clear this malfunction. And the 3 steps are tap, or tap and tug, as we've talked about before when inserting the mag. Tap, tug. We're going to rack and roll, and assess. We're back out on the target. Now we've decided we don't need a round downrange at this time. But did we get our malfunction taken care of? Well, let's see. We sure did. You see, we've got a round in the chamber now. So we've cleared that malfunction that we had. Now, the next one that we might have, if we go ahead and spit this round out, is we're at the range and we've got our magazine in place, but we forgot to tap and tug. Remember, we've talked about that tap and tug being important to get your magazine inserted. So we tapped it, but it was a pretty full magazine. So when we tapped it, it felt like it was locked into place there. But you'll notice that when I pull on it, it pops out. I don't have to press the magazine release button here. I just pull on it and it pops out. So that means I didn't have my magazine fully seated, even though it felt like it was fully seated. So what would happen? Well, obviously I've got an empty chamber there. So I'm at the range and I go to shoot and I get the click. Oh, okay. Well, I need to use my primary malfunction clearance drill, don't I? So what are the 3 steps again? Tap, tug, rack and roll, and assess. Now again, I've decided I don't need a round to come out at this point, but did I clear my malfunction? Well, let's see. Yes, as you can see, I now have a round in the chamber, which is what I didn't have before. So that cleared those 2 malfunctions. Now we're going to go ahead and get rid of that round as well. We're going to pop one out of our magazine here, and we're going to set up another type of malfunction, which is the stovepipe. It's often referred to. This is more accurately known as the failure to eject, but many times people refer to it as the stovepipe. Now, if you decide to practice these at home, please notice, again, number 1, I'm using dummy rounds to do all of these, and number 2, whenever I'm doing any of these functions, my finger is staying firmly off the trigger here on the frame of the weapon. So again, we've got here what is a failure to eject. Our brass started to spit out of the ejection port, but it didn't get all the way out, so it got kind of stuck in there. So this is again kind of referred to as a stovepipe because you've got a little pipe sticking up out of your slide there. So again, we've got our slide in place. So how would we clear this using that primary malfunction clearance? Well, the 3 steps again: tap, tug, rack and roll, and assess. Did we clear the problem? Let's check it out. Yep. We've now got one in the chamber, and we got rid of the one that didn't get ejected properly. So that one there in particular is the reason why we talk about the rack and roll. You notice when we roll, we're rolling our firearm to the right. We're doing this because what we're trying to do is use gravity as our friend. So you notice that everything ejects out of the right side of the firearm. So when we rack and roll, we allow gravity to help pull whatever is caught in that ejection port out of the way. So that's why we don't just rack, we actually rack and roll to help gravity pull whatever's in there out of the way. Now let's talk about the failure to extract. We talked about this being a secondary malfunction. So how do you know if you've got a primary malfunction or a secondary malfunction? Well, the whole thing that we're trying to teach you here is how to do things by instinct, just doing them by reaction rather than having to look, analyze, and think. This is where this will really come into play for you. As you look, you'll notice I've got what some people would refer to as a double feed. It's actually a failure to extract. My first round never extracted out of the barrel, and my second round is trying to feed in behind it. So now I've got a failure to extract malfunction. So, do I have to look at this and analyze it and figure it out while I'm at the range when I shoot? No. So here's what will happen. Again, we're using dummy rounds in here. If I go out to the range to shoot, and I point it at my target and I get this, you'll hear it's a funky sound. It's not even a regular click, right? It's a really different type of sound. It's definitely a different type of feel. You'll feel it when you get it. It'll feel completely different than what you're used to with a regular failure to fire or something along those lines. So when you get this, what should your reaction be? Well, what is our primary malfunction clearance? Tap and tug, rack and roll, and assess, right? So tap, tug, rack and roll, and assess. Nothing happened. You see, that malfunction stayed exactly like it was. It never got fixed. So if you have a malfunction and you do your primary malfunction clearance drill and nothing gets fixed, you now know that you need to go to a secondary malfunction clearance. So what are the steps for the secondary malfunction clearance? Well, the steps are going to be lock, rip, work, tap and tug, rack and roll, assess. And the way this works is, as you can see here, we're going to lock the slide open to the rear. Now, some people argue this is an unnecessary step, and I will tell you that when it comes to weapons such as Glocks, it is an unnecessary step. However, we're teaching you to practice it because if you use other types of weapons, most commonly ones like the Sig Sauer or the HK, you do need to do this step in order to make the next step work. So we teach you to just do everything from the start. It's not going to hurt you to do this little extra step. But what we want to do is we want to lock the slide open to the rear. Well, you look at it and you go, huh? Isn't the slide all the way to the rear? Well, no, it's not. And you'll see this because my slide stop lever can't get up into that little notch where it's supposed to be when I lock the slide open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull that slide all the way to the rear and then press that slide stop button up and lock the slide open. What I've now done is I've taken some pressure off of this round that's trying to get behind the other one. So I've given myself a little relief so that I can get this magazine out. Again, with Glocks, it will work just to strip the magazine out, but with some other types of firearms, you actually need to lock the slide open. So the first step is lock that slide open. The second step is we're going to press our magazine release button. We're going to rip the magazine out of there. Now you may have seen that that round dropped right out. That's great if it works. It doesn't always work, especially if you had a broken extractor and some heat and some gases had exploded in there. You might have one that's a little bit more jammed up inside of your firearm. So we've done our lock, our rip. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work the slide. When we say work the slide, what we want to do is we want to work it aggressively at least 3 times. And the other thing we want to do is we want to point straight up in the air. Now, why do we point straight up in the air when we're working the slide? Again, think about what our malfunction was on this. We've got a round that is stuck in the barrel. It has not ejected. The casing did not eject properly out of the barrel. Excuse me, it did not extract properly out of the barrel. So if it does not extract properly out of the barrel, we need to figure out how we're going to get it out of there. One of the things we're going to do is use gravity with aggressive movements to kind of jar it loose. So you can do this either with the slide in, or excuse me, with the magazine in your hand, or you can stow it somewhere. I prefer to hold on to the magazine when I do this to be ready to go, but you can do it however it works for you. It's really not a big deal. So again, we've locked that slide open, ripped out the magazine. We're now going to work the slide. We're going to get up and we're going to aggressively 1, 2, 3. Really work that slide. So I'm pressing while I'm pulling, trying to get that thing freed out of there. Now that I've worked the slide, what do you think I'm going to do? Hey, guess what? We go back to our primary malfunction clearance. Take your magazine, whether it's in your pocket or in your hand, whatever it is. You're going to tap and tug it into place. You're going to rack and roll the chamber, and you're going to assess. Did that clear that seemingly impossible malfunction? Well, looks like I've got one ready to go in the chamber, right? So that's how you're going to clear a secondary malfunction. So for those of you that want to try this malfunction clearance at home to get the feel for it again, make sure you're using some kind of a dummy or inert round. You don't want to be using live rounds to do these malfunction clearances. That can be very dangerous. So make sure you're using a dummy or inert round. What we're going to do is we're now going to take one round, we're going to tilt the barrel down, and we're going to let gravity do its thing as we insert this dummy round into the barrel. We're then going to take some dummy rounds in our magazine. We're going to come, put it into the magazine well. When you do this part, normally we teach you to rack the slide, let it go. We're going to tell you to ease the slide forward when simulating this malfunction. And the reason is the movement we're doing here is not a normal movement for the gun, so you don't want to cause any damage to your internal parts. So make sure when you pull that slide back, you ease it forward. Don't let it slam forward if you can help it. So that's how you set up that secondary malfunction, that failure to extract. And the way we're going to clear it again is we're going to just go through the steps real quick so you can kind of see how quickly it can be done. Let's say I'm out at the range, I'm shooting, I go get that ugly click, I'm going to tap and tug, rack and roll, assess, oops, that didn't fix it. I'm going to lock my slide open, rip the mag out, work, tap and tug, rack, back on target. As you can see, that didn't take very long to get a very complicated malfunction cleared out. So what about a tertiary malfunction? What would a tertiary malfunction be? A tertiary malfunction is a bad day. That means that something has gone wrong with your firearm that is going to require a gunsmith or some type of professional to fix the firearm. It's not something you're going to clear on the range. It's not something that's going to get taken care of while you're actively shooting. You're going to have to turn this firearm over to somebody to get it professionally cleared. Or if you have the knowledge and the know-how, you'll have to use your own special tools and skills to get this firearm fixed at home, at your shop, whatever, but it's not something you're going to get cleared at the range. So if you have something that is not cleared by one of these two malfunction clearance drills, you are going to need to find a professional that can fix your firearm for you.